How's that? Okay. Well, gosh, thank you guys for being here and thanks for inviting me. I did bring my wife, Nicole. She follows me around. Doesn't hear me talking up, I guess. So, first off, if you have any questions during this, please just put your hands up or stop me and I'll do my best to answer it. I'll also try to pause a few times and see if there's any questions. There are a few members of our lodge here. John, Mike, Jimmy, and Nick is a member of our lodge. So thank you guys for coming. So, my name is Keith Voss, and I belong to Morning Star Masonic Lodge here in Jefferson. That is generally how I introduce myself to new or other Masons. I do not like to talk about myself, and I'm not much for titles or ranks, but I feel it may lend credibility to this presentation. So I will also say that I currently serve as Worshipful Master of Morning Star Lodge. I'm also a certified district lecturer, which does not mean what you would think it does. I'm also a permanent voting member of the Grand Lodge of Iowa, and I currently have the privilege of serving as the Deputy Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Iowa. So I'll touch on most of those titles later. I have a deep love of this great fraternity, and because of that, some of this might sound like I'm recruiting, but please forgive me if it does, it's not intended for that. So who are the Freemasons? Freemasons don't always do such a good job of defining what they are or what they do. But that's often because the answers non-Masons look for are really too complicated. Freemasonry, or just plain Masonry for short, is a society of men concerned with moral and spiritual values. Modern Freemasonry began with the founding of the Grand Lodge of England in 1717, and much Masonic language and symbolism dates from that time. The Masons are the world's oldest and largest fraternal organization, older than the Elks, the Moose, Eagles, Kiwanis, Rotary, and a host of others. No simple one-line definition satisfactorily describes what Freemasonry is. It is a philosophy and a system of morality and ethics, a pretty basic one at that. But here are some of the main points. Freemasonry is a fraternity of men bound together by oaths, based on the medieval stonemason craft guilds. Masonic laws, rules, legends, and customs are based on the ancient charges, the rules of those craft guilds. Because Masonry is a fraternity, Masons refer to each other as brother. It is a sign of respect and commitment to one another. Freemasonry teaches lessons of social and moral virtues based on symbolism of the tools and language of the ancient building trade, using the building of a structure as a symbol for the building of character of men. Masons are obliged to practice brotherly love, mutual assistance, equality, secrecy, and trust between each other. Masons have secret methods of recognizing each other, such as handshakes, signs, and passwords. We'll talk more about these secrets later. Some Masonic titles have the words worshipful in it. That title, as used by Masons, has nothing whatsoever to do with religion. It is used in its 18th century sense and is the equivalent of honorable in modern English. The Master of the Lodge, for example, is its chief presiding officer, similar to the president. Thus, Worshipful Master simply means honorable president. Masons meet in lodges that are governed by a master and assisted by a warden, where petitioners who are found to be morally and mentally qualified are admitted using secret ritual ceremonies based on the legends of the ancient guilds. Freemasonry is not a religion, and it has no religious dogma that it forces its members to accept. Masons must simply believe in the existence of a supreme being, whatever they conceive that deity to be. Their beliefs are just that, personal. I've been to lodges. Our lodge has the Holy Bible on the altar. The lodge in Ames has a couple other holy books on it, and I've been to a lodge in D.C. that has 5 different holy books on it. So recently we bought some different holy books to display in our lodge as a symbol that Masonry accepts men of all faiths. Freemasonry is not a science, but it does teach its members to value learning and experience. It encourages Masons to think, but does not tell them what to think. To put it another way, Masonry might be one of the last great institutions that encourages free thought. Freemasonry teaches Masons to be tolerant of the beliefs of others and regard each man as their equal, deserving both their respect and their assistance. Politics are not allowed to be discussed in the Masonic Lodge. It's one of my favorite parts. Masons wear white aprons when in lodge. They are a symbol of purity of thought and deed. So I brought a few different white aprons. This is just a plain white apron. This is what most masons wear in lodge. I would say 90% of masons would wear this while they're in lodge. This is an actual white leather apron. This is given to a mason when he takes his first degree. And generally the next time he wears it is at his own funeral. So when a mason passes away, if he wants a Masonic funeral, his family does, they come looking for this. So we all have it stored somewhere. And they'll usually put it on the body in a coffin, or put it on the coffin, or I've heard people being cremated with it on, or it's used draped over the urn during the ceremony. But yeah, these are very important to all masons. And as I said, as master of the lodge, this is an officer's apron, and this is the one I wear. The square is a symbol of the worshipful master. There's several different ones for all the officers. Some lodges use officers' aprons and some don't, but ours does, and this is the one I wear. And I also, so I serve as Deputy Grand Master, so this is a little fancier, so this is the one I wear when I serve in that capacity. The threading is actual gold. So this is very tired, it's got a lot of miles on it. But yeah. Let's see. Iowa currently has about 10,000 masons. Each lodge has a worshipful master, secretary, treasurer, wardens, deacons, stewards, and a few other officers. Most lodges, the officers wear jewels when they're in office. So whoever's sitting in the worshipful master's chair would wear the master's jewel, and each other office has a jewel they wear around their neck. Kind of neat. The local lodge are all governed by whichever Grand Lodge issued them their charter to work. Here in Jefferson, our charter was issued by the Grand Lodge of Iowa on June 7th, 1861 in New Jefferson. I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably heard that story. It's kind of a neat story. It actually says that on our charter. It says New Jefferson. I did not bring our charter because it's old and we don't even like touching it. So anytime you guys want to look at it, you can come look at it. So, 10 Iowa lodges are actually older than the state of Iowa. So Des Moines Lodge number 1, which is in Burlington, received its charter on October 20th, 1841. The Grand Lodge of Iowa is governed by the same type of officers as the local lodges, such as the Grand Master, Grand Secretary, and so on. My current position within the Grand Lodge is Deputy Grand Master. So what that means is I'm the right-hand man of the Grand Master and his Chief of Staff, and in charge of the other 15 officers. Also, I'm expected to be able to fill in for him at a moment's notice should he become ill or incapacitated. And fun fact, the Grand Lodge of any particular state or area is the highest authority in the land. There's no such thing as the Grand Lodge of the United States. So we answer to the Grand Lodge of Iowa and nothing else. So, as I said, this is the jewel I wear in lodge. But when I'm in a Grand Lodge event, I wear this. And each of the officers have one of these. There's, 15 of us in total, and then there's a few other past Grand Masters and stuff that have these. This set was purchased in 1910. It is real gold. And I believe they had them appraised about 20 years ago at about $30,000 a piece. So, yeah, it's heavy in more ways than one. So, how does one join? Remember, this is not a recruiting seminar. The requirements of membership are pretty simple. A candidate must be male, over the age of 18, and of a good reputation. Aside from that, he simply has to ask. I've often heard people say things like, well, nobody's ever asked me to join. Generally, Masons will not invite you to join. It's not unheard of, but it is not common. In fact, I've heard that some time ago, not only did you have to ask, you had to ask twice. I've even heard that for some of the appendant bodies, which I'll get into a little more of those later, you had to ask 3 times. But to get started, a man simply has to ask. Once he asks, he'll be given a petition to fill out. The petition gets read at the next meeting, where a committee is assigned to visit with him, and if he desires his family also, to answer questions and make inquiry into his character. At the next regular meeting, and at least 30 days after the petition was originally read, the committee reports to the lodge, and the candidate is voted on. And for for that, we use this peculiar thing. This is what's called a ballot box. And because when we vote on a candidate, it is a secret vote. So in here are white balls, little bitty black cubes. And when you vote, try not to dump this, the person puts them through this little hole, so they go into the other side, so we can see how the ballot came out later. But this is done in a manner so that the person holding the box cannot even see how the other person is voting. Kind of a neat thing. And fun fact, the voting must be unanimous. If one person votes no, the person does not get in. Now, it doesn't mean just because someone doesn't like you, you won't get in. Generally what we're taught is if we have a reason to believe they're not of good character, they're not trustworthy, they're a felon, things like that, we're supposed to vote no. But we're not supposed to vote no just because we don't like the person. I have had people ask, what do? I just can't stand this person, but they're not a criminal or anything. My advice to them is don't go to lodge tonight they vote. That's the best thing to do. But yeah. So, if the candidate is approved, we begin the process of scheduling the degrees. So the degrees. So often, non-Masons ask me what degree I am. Then they proceed to tell me about Grandpa, who is a 27th degree or a 32nd degree or something like that. So I'll do my best to explain how degrees work. When someone gets approved for membership, they take their first degree. Then on another night, they take their second, and on another night, they take their third degree. The best way I have found to describe a degree is a sort of initiation ceremony. What is meant to teach the candidate something, and it is secret. The candidate will take certain solemn obligations, some of which are to keep certain secrets, such as the ceremony itself. Once they've taken their third degree, they're a full-fledged Master Mason. This is what I am, the third degree Mason, and is said to be the last and highest grade of ancient craft masonry. But I know you've heard of other degrees. This kind of takes us to talking about other Masonic bodies. So once someone has taken their third degree, they can do things like vote in lodge, which, fun fact, if someone is in lodge and entitled to vote, they must vote, and they may not vote present. Members can also hold office, join other lodges, and join other Masonic bodies. So there are dozens of other Masonic bodies, I don't even know all of them, such as the Scottish Rite, the York Rite, the Eastern Star, which has women members as well as men, the Shrine, and so on. So fun fact, a lot of people don't know all Shriners are Masons, but not all Masons are Shriners. Also the Knights Templar. The Scottish Rite and York Rite bodies have more degrees, which are more lessons to be taught. Does not mean that one would be a higher up Mason simply because it simply means they belong to one of those organizations. Their members can aspire to go up to the 32nd degree. So many of you have probably heard of the 33rd degree. That is an honorable degree and is not given upon request of a candidate. The other members of the 33rd degree choose who gets to join that, and I'm not sure what those requirements are because I'm not one of them. I belong to what is called the Blue Lodge, which is the local lodge, and I do not belong to any other Masonic orders. So, now that you have kind of a basic understanding of degrees, I mentioned that I'm a district lecturer. So what that means, and I brought my district lecturer certificate. So it doesn't mean what you think. I'm not certified to lecture on masonry, although I'm doing that right now. Before someone can be a district lecturer, they have to be what's called a Masonic instructor, which that doesn't even really mean what you think it does. So to be a Masonic instructor, one has to have memorized every word of every part of all 3 degrees, word perfect. It's about 6 to 7 hours of ritual, and it's 25,000 words, and it has to be perfect. So once they've tested for that, they are what's called a Masonic instructor. And then over the next few years, they're expected to go to study clubs and help teach, and go to schools and teach and learn. And during that time, they learn the floor work, the marching, all that other fun stuff, and then they retest for their Masonic instructor. And then if they pass all that, as well as demonstrating a capacity to teach, they are then granted their district lecture. So it's not an easy thing to get. Notable Freemasons from Iowa include Robert Lucas, Samuel Kirkwood, Terry Branstad, John Wayne, Buffalo Bill Cody, Grant Wood, Ringling Brothers, Chuck Grassley, Bill Sorensen, and Bill Kendall. The last two probably sound familiar to you guys. guys. Well, y'all probably sound familiar too. So Masonic terms that you probably hear all the time and you may or may not know that they're Masonic. Blackball. You guys heard of blackball someone? Well, that's us. The funny thing is, they're not black balls anymore. They used to be. But you can see that this is designed in a way that so once someone gets their hand in there, they can't really see what they're grabbing. So instead of going like this and showing everybody how they're voting, they turn the black balls into black cubes. But they were once black. Giving someone the third degree. Of course, that's us. Being on the level with someone and being square with someone. That all comes from us. And also, to some extent, Friday the 13th, the stigma around Friday the 13th. Anybody ever know where that came from? So, when they rounded up the Knights Templar, it was on Friday the 13th. And their leader was Jacques de Molay. And he was burned at the stake because he would not give up his other knights. And there's actually a Masonic order called de Molay that is a young men's organization. And it's a beautiful organization. So yeah, to some extent, Friday the 13th is kind of us too. So, Masonic secrets. So what's with all the secrets anyway? So it is absolutely true. We have plenty of secret handshakes and